I was slicing apples in the kitchen. Nothing special, just another quiet Thursday, the kind where the clock ticks louder than the TV. Then I heard the front door creak. Footsteps. Heavy ones. He walked in, dragging a suitcase behind him. Not the small kind you take for a weekend. Number this was the kind you pack when you're not coming back. I turned around slowly. "Where are you going?" I asked it calmly. I think I already knew. He didn't even look ashamed. His shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved, but his eyes, they were too clear, too certain. "I'm leaving," he said. "I've met someone. Her name's Amber. She's 32. We're in love." I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just exhaled. 50 years. Half a century of birthdays, hospital visits, Christmases, burnt dinners, and late-night arguments over the thermostat. All dismissed in 3 sentences. "I want a fresh start," he continued. "She makes me feel alive." Alive? I looked down at my hands, still sticky from the apple juice, still wearing the gold ring he slipped on my finger in 1975, still here. Then I said nothing, not a scream, not a sob, not a single curse, just silence. I wiped my hands, walked to the hallway drawer. He watched me like I might grab a knife, but I wasn't angry. No, I was ready. From the drawer, I pulled out a yellowed envelope. Old, thick, my name and his, written in faded ink. I walked back over and held it out. He hesitated. "What's this?" he asked, his voice suddenly smaller. I smiled. The kind of smile you save for endings. "You made me sign it 50 years ago," I said. "You said love needed protection." He opened it, and as his eyes scanned the pages, I saw the moment he remembered. His mouth twitched. His face dropped. His hand gripped the edge of the envelope like it might save him from drowning. Because there it was, the prenup. The one that said, if he left me for someone else, I kept everything. Everything. The house, the savings, the accounts, even the dog. He looked up at me, suddenly desperate. "This isn't fair," he whispered. But I leaned in, voice low, steady, unshaken. "You said the same thing," I told him, "when I wanted to go to art school. And just like that, I turned away, picked up my apple, took a bite. Crunch! He stood frozen, still holding the past in his hands. But me? I was already thinking about Paris.
He stood there for a long time, still gripping that envelope like it might change, like the words would rearrange themselves into mercy. But they didn't. He finally set it down on the counter, slowly, carefully, like it might explode. "This can't be right," he said. "I didn't think you'd still have it." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I kept everything, dear, especially the things you thought I'd forget." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. For 50 years, he thought I was the quiet wife, the one who looked away when he came home late, the one who smiled politely at dinner parties, even when I knew he was lying. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. He tried to laugh it off. "She's not after my money, you know," he said, shrugging. "Amber loves me for me." I almost admired his delusion, but I didn't argue. I just walked over to the sink, turned on the tap, and rinsed the apple juice from my fingers. "She loves you?" I said without turning around. "Then let her have you. All of you, including the unpaid credit card bills, the second mortgage, and that shady little crypto loan you never told me about." Silence. I turned around. His face was pale, his mouth slightly open. "How did you—" "I'm not stupid," I said gently. "Just quiet." He stepped forward, desperate now. "Look, we can work something out. We don't have to do this the hard way." I tilted my head. "The hard way? You mean—" The way where I spend another decade pretending not to exist while you chase youth like it's a currency you can actually afford? He looked like he'd just been slapped. I walked past him, calm, collected, like the storm had already passed, and I was the sky after. At the door, I paused. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, without looking back. "You might want to let Amber know she's not moving into this house." He blinked. "What? Where am I supposed to go?" I finally turned, and this time, I didn't smile. "Anywhere you like," I said, "but leave the key on the table." And with that, I walked upstairs, left him in the kitchen, surrounded by the crumbs of his choices, still holding the fantasy of a new life. But me? I was already planning mine, and it didn't include him. He left the next morning, didn't say goodbye, didn't even shut the front door properly, just vanished. Like a man running from a fire he started. I heard through a neighbor that he'd moved in with her. Amber, the love of his life, the one who wore Chanel knockoffs and thought vintage wine was anything over $10. 2 weeks later, a photo popped up on Facebook. Amber had posted it, them, on a balcony, holding cheap champagne, captioned, "New beginnings with my king. Our dream life starts now." I stared at the screen, not with anger, not with pain, with amusement. Dream life? Oh, honey. She had no idea the king she just crowned had a mountain of unpaid taxes, 3 frozen investment accounts, and a pension that only existed because I had kept working. But sure, dream life. I leaned back in my chair, sipped my coffee, and waited. Because here's the thing about dreams. When they're built on lies, they collapse fast. 3 days later, I got a call. Not from him, from her. Amber. I didn't answer, but I let it go to voicemail. Her voice shook. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson? I mean, Judith, wow, okay, I didn't realize how much debt Richard had. He said you handled all the money stuff. We just got an eviction notice. Click. I deleted the message, then poured myself another glass of wine. Because that's what happens when someone thinks they've won a prize. But the prize is broken. She got the man, but not the one she imagined. She got the version of him that I'd carried for years. The needy one, the reckless one, the one who thought love was about being adored, not being accountable. Now she would get the late-night panic over bills, the bounced checks, the charming smile that fades the second life gets real. I used to cry over that man. Now? I just watch the show. And, oh, it's only just begun. It was a Thursday afternoon. Same creaky floors, same ticking clock, but the silence felt different, charged, like the calm just before a storm. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go once, twice, third time, I answered, a smooth voice on the other end. "Hello, this is Marcus Levin, Richard Thompson's attorney. I'm calling to discuss a potential settlement. Richard believes the current terms of the prenuptial agreement may be unnecessarily punitive." I nearly laughed. Punitive? You mean the agreement he demanded? The one where he said he needed protection? Because I was just a waitress back then? But I didn't laugh. I sat down, crossed my legs, held the phone like a wine glass. "I see," I said calmly. "And what exactly does Richard want?" A pause. "He's hoping to retain partial rights to the house, perhaps a percentage of the joint assets. He feels blindsided." Blindsided? I pictured him, standing in that cheap rental Amber probably decorated with plastic roses and faux marble countertops. No staff, no stocks. Just him, his debts, and the echo of my silence. I cleared my throat. "Tell Richard. I said softly, that I honored every vow for 50 years, even the ones he forgot. Another pause. Mrs. Thompson, I do believe Richard is open to negotiation. No, I interrupted, voice firm now. I'm not. I stood, walking toward the window. The sunlight hit the floorboards in stripes. Freedom looked warm. Tell him, I said, that I'm being quiet. Not cruel. Cruel would be calling Amber. Cruel would be selling the story to the press. Cruel would be telling him what I really know. The lawyer didn't speak, so I kept going. Remind your client that I kept his secrets, covered his gambling, smoothed things over when he lost his job, twice. I even kept that night in Atlantic City to myself. And that, Mr. Levin, wasn't in the prenup. Silence. Then a shaky breath. Understood, he said quietly. I'll pass along the message. Click. I set the phone down, and for the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not victory, not revenge, relief. Because sometimes power doesn't roar, it whispers, and mine had been whispering for years. Now, it was finally being heard. People used to say we were the perfect couple, the kind they invited to barbecues, to church, to awkward Christmas parties. We smiled in photos, held hands at dinner, sent out joint birthday cards. Perfect. But perfection has a price. And behind closed doors, mine cost me everything. It started small. He made all the big decisions. What car we bought, what city we moved to, what color the kitchen should be. Because you don't know how to match tones. I laughed it off. Told myself he was just particular. Told myself love meant compromise. Then came the subtle jabs. You're lucky I take care of the finances. You'd be lost without me. You used to be prettier, you know. I wore makeup I didn't like, cooked meals I didn't eat, laughed at jokes that made my chest tighten. And every time I tried to speak up, he called me dramatic, sensitive, silly. So I stopped speaking, but I started writing, in journals, on scraps of paper, late at night when he was snoring beside me, reeking of bourbon and arrogance. I wrote down every detail he thought I'd forget. The texts from clients at 1 a.m., the business trips that ended in lipstick-stained shirts, the credit card bills with charges from hotels in cities we'd never visited together. He thought I was clueless, but I was just waiting for the day he'd give me permission to leave. By finally walking away, and now, he had. Right into the arms of a woman who hadn't even been born when we bought our first home. Let her have him. Let her discover how charming turns to controlling, how attention turns to entitlement. Let her hear the words, "You'd be nothing without me," because I've already heard them. I've already lived them. And now, I was finally free. Free from the cage he called comfort. Free from the script I'd been reading for 5 decades. And for the first time in my life, I was about to improvise. The day I booked the flight, I didn't tell anyone. Not the neighbors who used to pity me. Not my sister, who still believed divorce is failure. Not even my lawyer. I just opened my laptop, typed in one word, Paris. And my heart, for the first time in years, didn't feel like a clenched fist. See, Richard always said Paris was overrated, too crowded, too expensive, too French. But I always knew the real reason. Paris didn't bend to him. Paris had its own rhythm, its own pride, just like I once did, before I shrank myself to fit his shadow. I stared at the screen. Flights, dates, choices. My hand hovered over the mouse. Then I clicked. Round trip, business class, 1 seat. In 2 weeks, I'd be gone. No dramatic goodbye, no eat, pray, love monologue. Just gone. That night, I opened the old chest in the attic. the one he always told me to throw out. Inside were pieces of the woman I used to be, paintings from my college days, a letter I wrote to myself at 22, a dusty, crumpled envelope labeled, "Things I Still Want." I opened it slowly, like a secret. Inside, see the Eiffel Tower at sunrise, eat dessert before dinner, dance in the rain, fall in love with myself. I sat on the floor, breath caught in my throat. That girl. She hadn't died. She'd just been buried, under laundry, under fear, under him. But she was waking up now, and she was hungry. So I started packing, not just clothes, but dreams, desire, dignity. I didn't pack guilt or regret or memories that didn't serve me anymore. And as I zipped up that suitcase, as the zipper echoed through the quiet house, it sounded less like luggage and more like closure. Paris didn't greet me with violins. It greeted me with rain, the kind that soaks your scarf, blurs your glasses, and makes your suitcase wheels rattle against cobblestones like a nervous heartbeat. And still, I smiled. Because this rain? It didn't ask me to shrink. It didn't criticize my choices. It just fell. I checked into a little hotel tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. Exactly the kind of place Richard would have called charming in a sad way. But to me, it felt like freedom in bricks and buttered air. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jet lag, nerves, or maybe excitement. So I walked, alone, down Rue Montorgueil, past glowing cafes and lovers kissing under awnings like scenes from movies I used to watch and quietly envy. And then, I saw him. Not Richard. Someone else. Older. Wearing a navy coat, holding a sketch pad under one arm. He was standing under a cafe awning, staring at me. Not in a creepy way. In a way that said, "I see something." I kept walking. He took a step forward. "Pardon, madame." His voice was soft, French. Then, in hesitant English, "May I draw you?" I blinked, laughed nervously. "Me?" He nodded. "You have the kind of sadness that makes art." I should have said no, should have walked away. But instead, I sat, right there on a cold metal chair, while the city whispered and the rain softened to mist. He sketched in silence, then paused. "You've loved deeply," he said, eyes still on the page, "and been invisible." Tears welled up before I could stop them. I didn't know this man, and yet, he had named the ache I'd carried for 50 years. He tore the page gently from the pad, held it out. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Me. I reached for my wallet. He shook his head. "No," he said. "Just live beautifully now." Then he walked away, and I sat there, alone, in the rain, holding a picture of a woman I was just starting to meet. The next morning, I sipped espresso on a tiny balcony overlooking the Rue Saint-Honoré, a croissant in one hand, the sketch in the other. Paris was awake, and so was I. I hadn't touched my phone in over 24 hours. And for the first time in decades, the silence felt safe. But curiosity crept in. So I powered it on. Ding! My screen lit up with notifications. News, promotions, spam, and one email. From Richard Daniels. Subject, urgent. My stomach twisted. I stared at the subject line. Couldn't bring myself to open it. Until my finger moved before I could change my mind. It read, "Judith, I made a terrible mistake. She left me. Took everything. Money, the car, even my mother's ring. I'm ruined. I need your help. Please, call me. I can't do this without you. R." I read it once, twice, and then I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not cruel, a laugh of clarity. He thought I'd return, that I was still the woman who'd drop everything to save him, who'd clean up the mess he made with his pride and ego. But that woman? She was gone. Buried under a sketch, a croissant, a sky that didn't belong to him. I stared out at the city, the people bustling below, the language I didn't fully understand but had already fallen in love with. And I whispered to myself, slowly, deliberately, I am not your safety net anymore. Then, I did something he never expected. I replied, Richard, you're right. You made a mistake, but it wasn't her. It was losing me. Don't worry, I'll be okay. In fact, I already am. Judith. No anger, no begging, no rescue, just truth. And as I hit send, the sun broke through the Paris clouds. Warm, software. Like the beginning of something I hadn't dared believe in for years. Peace. The days passed in Paris like a secret I was starting to keep from myself. Each one felt a little more mine, a little more free. I explored the city. I got lost in the arrondissements, wandered through the Musée d'Orsay, let the Eiffel Tower light up my nights with its glittering promise. But it wasn't just the sights. It was the feeling of being untethered. The sensation that the world, my world, wasn't confined by anyone's expectations, but my own. Then, 2 weeks after I hit send on that email, something arrived. A letter. From the lawyer. I didn't know what it said at first. I just stared at the envelope, feeling its weight like a stone in my hand. Richard had always handled the business side of things. Finances, assets, contracts. I'd never needed to look at the details. But now, I was ready. I opened it slowly, and my eyes skimmed over the words, but the message was clear. Richard had made the mistake of thinking I was just the woman who stayed. The one who'd clean up his mess. The one who'd always let him back in when he was tired of chasing younger women and running up debts. What he didn't know was that while he was off being someone else's problem, I had quietly taken control. I'd protected myself. I'd secured what was mine. And now, his debts, his mistakes, were his to deal with. And mine? I was in Paris. I was free. But the final part of the letter was what stopped me cold. Judith, we've completed the transfer of assets as per the prenup. The villa, the accounts, and the investments are now officially yours. Your request for privacy and freedom has been granted. There is no further need for any action on your part. Sincerely, the Law Office of Laird and Associates. It hit me like a punch to the chest, but not the kind that knocks you down, the kind that lifts you up. It was real. It was final. I had the power now. The villa, the assets, the life we'd built, all of it was mine. And I wasn't going to keep it out of guilt. I wasn't going to give it back to him because of some twisted sense of obligation. I wasn't going to fall back into the patterns that held me captive for so long. I was going to live. I was going to live. That afternoon, I stood in front of my hotel mirror. I looked at the woman I'd become. The woman who walked away from a life that held her back. The woman who finally saw her own worth. I'd done it. I'd finally taken control. And now? I wasn't looking back. I grabbed my phone, opened the message app, and texted the lawyer. Thank you. I'm ready to move forward. I'll be in touch. Then, I did something Richard would never have expected. I didn't call him. I didn't let him beg me. I didn't let him ruin my new beginning. Instead, I walked down to the Seine, and for the first time in decades, I felt the rush of the river carrying me forward. No longer bound by the past, no longer weighed down by his mistakes. Just me and the city that finally felt like home.